So is it time for a new union? Many of you are familiar with what's going on in current events, that the state of Texas brought a case before the Supreme Court titled The State of Texas versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state of Georgia, the state of Michigan, and the state of Wisconsin. And just real briefly, I know a lot of people don't actually read these things. A lot of times I don't either, so I'm not scolding anybody for doing that. But I read a little bit of the bill, and I'm going to share a couple of highlights of it for you so you know what was in it. Titled The Bill of Complaint. Our country stands at an important crossroads. Either the Constitution matters and must be followed, even when some officials consider it inconvenient or out of date, or it is simply a piece of parchment on display at the National Archives. We ask the court to choose the former. Lawful elections are at the heart of our constitutional democracy. The public, indeed, the candidates themselves, have a compelling interest in ensuring that the selection of a president, any president, is legitimate. If that trust is lost, the American experiment will founder. A dark cloud hangs over the 2020 presidential election. And continuing on here a little bit more, here is what we know. Using the COVID-19 pandemic as justification, government officials in the defendant states of Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, collectively defendant states, usurped their legislators' authority and unconstitutionally revised their states' election results. They accomplished these statutory revisions through executive fiat or friendly lawsuits, thereby weakening ballot integrity. Okay, so they're basically saying in this lawsuit that if somebody gets by, if somebody gets by with voter fraud, and we don't fix all of this voter fraud, and we don't get to the bottom of what happened in the 2020 election, then our government, our constitutional republic, is in danger of falling. We are no longer a free people. We're no longer a free country if elections are not real. Okay, we cannot have fake elections. Otherwise, we end up like a third world dictatorship, and we definitely don't want that. So, Allen West here. Well, first off, I must say, I think it was Thursday. The Supreme Court refused to even hear that case. Unbelievable. You know, it's like, what is the Supreme Court for? Legalizing abortion and gay marriage? Is that all they are for? This is the time, this is the moment that we have a Supreme Court for, to protect the Constitution, to protect the Republic. But yet, they're fearful. They're probably worried about their reputations. Oh, I don't want it to look like I'm siding with President Trump because he nominated me as a Supreme Court justice. Well, I think somebody said it well the other day. Mark Levin, he said the Supreme Court just put the knife to their own throat, because the Supreme Court supposedly, they're trying to protect the integrity of the Supreme Court. Well, the integrity of the Supreme Court is going to be totally annihilated if the Democrats get away with this election fraud and they pack the Supreme Court with a number of other liberal justices. The institution's going to be wiped out by their failure to do what they're supposed to do. Very, very disappointing. Especially it was two of the five Supreme or conservative justices that Trump didn't appoint wanted to hear the case. They wanted to hear the case. It was the three that Trump appointed that seemed to be really decent conservatives didn't want to hear the case. And I can pretty much guess why, because they're worried about their reputation. Oh, they're going to think that I just was a pawn of Donald Trump and I want to be independent and make sure everybody knows that. Independent and make sure everybody knows that while your country goes in the gutter? Ridiculous. Anyways, Colonel West, Allen West here, came out with a statement after the Supreme Court decision here to not take the case. He says the Supreme Court is tossing the election suit that was joined by 17 states. This is huge. 17 states and 106 U.S. congressmen have decreed that a state can take unconstitutional actions and violate its own election law, resulting in damaging effects on other states that abide by the law, while the guilty suffer no consequences. This decision establishes a precedent that says states can violate the U.S. Constitution and not be held accountable. This decision will have far-reaching ramifications for the future of our constitutional republic. Now, this is what I highlighted here. Perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution. And in a couple slides here, I'm going to show some Bible verses that may support the idea of doing exactly what Allen West is proposing here. When you're in a national political covenant or agreement, and one side is totally ignoring all of the laws and the rules that we're supposed to play by, you can't keep continuing on like that. That at some point there's going to be a separation. You've got to separate from them, because if they're not following the rules and they're violating your sacred oath, your sacred agreement, then there's no other choice but to move away from those people. Rush Limbaugh even echoed this by saying, I actually think, and I've referenced this, I've alluded to this a couple times because I've seen others allude to this. Now check this out. I actually think we're trending toward secession. It can't go on this way, he continued. There cannot be a peaceful coexistence of two completely different theories of life, theories of government, theories of how we manage our affairs. We can't be in this dire a conflict without something giving somewhere along the way. And I've been saying this for a long time, probably been saying this for 10 years, ever since Obama got in. You got these two different Americas. It's not sustainable, okay? You cannot continue to be this divided and expect to continue on as a nation. And how do I know that? Well, it's a biblical fact. Check it out. Jesus says in Matthew 3, verse 24, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. It's not a maybe or perhaps, or maybe we can figure out a magical solution to make this work. Either the other half conforms to the other half, either one half conforms to the other half, or if it remains divided, the nation will fall. So in other words, either these liberals will have to conform in one way or the other, or they're going to try to force us to conform to them. Otherwise, there's going to be some kind of separation at some point. Now, I'm hoping and praying that Donald Trump will, if he needs to, declare martial law and what was that? The Insurrection Act. Declare that he's using that, and actually start rounding up all of these traitors and all of these leaders of the fake news media and these politicians that were taking bribes from China. All these people that were conspiring against our nation. The only way our nation can be saved is if they're rounded up and put in prison and face justice. We cannot continue on unless something like that happens. Because, again, Jesus didn't say maybe a kingdom divided will fall. He says a nation divided against itself, or a kingdom, it cannot stand. It's impossible. It will eventually split. Okay? Again, echoing what was said in that, 17 other states where, you got half of the United States in that lawsuit against those other states. I mean, we're divided. Okay. The one good thing about this is that we're not a small minority right now. We're divided, but at least there's about half of us that care about our country and want freedom. Now, if we were only a tenth, I'd be thinking, well, there's no hope. So right now I think there's hope, but I think that hope might at some point either be these criminals are rounded up and brought to justice so that we can reunite as a nation, or there be a split. All right. Revelation chapter 18, many of you are familiar with these scriptures, but there is a time in biblical prophecy when God's people are called to leave Babylon, to leave this globalist one world government, okay? And it says Revelation 18 verse 1, and after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, and has become, now check this out, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now, I don't think we cannot say that about the Democrat Party and the radical left. They are. What I'm saying is this perfectly fits them. When you see Antifa raging in the streets, you see Black Lives Matter, you see all this crazy demonic activity. America is filled with demonic activity right now. Okay? It has become, in our inner cities anyways, away from the heartland, a cage of every unclean and hateful spirit, every false spirit. Verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine. That's how you know we're talking about globalism here. All nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Okay? You got China. China selling all their goods to America. And, basically when you look at this, all the kings of the earth want globalism because they are the kings of the earth, and the major global corporations like Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, they all want this world government, okay? They want us all to drink of the wine of the wrath of their idolatry, of their fornication. It says right here, the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Now think about this. That's why during COVID-19, all of the small businesses are shut down, while all the big major global corporations are allowed to sell their goods to us. They're trying to kill the little man so that the rich and the powerful in this globalist Babylon can become richer and more powerful. Verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, now check this out, come out of her, my people. Why? That you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. Now think about this. If America could just split between the radical left and the conservatives, we find our states and we make a sanctuary there, and the liberals can have their own place. Imagine what it would be like in the liberal zone. It would be full of every demonic spirit. It would become so lawless, so corrupt, and what would God do then? He would punish them for their sins, and they would receive all these plagues, right? And we could sit over there going, man, I'm glad I got the heck out of there. Look at them suffer, right? It's their own fault. But if we stay united with the radical left, what do you think's going to happen? We're going to receive the plagues that they're bringing upon us. Liberalism brings plagues upon us. Leftism, globalism, all these idolatrous ways of living, all these worship of government rather than worship of God. socialism. All these ways cause the righteous to suffer. At some point, I believe we're going to be called to maybe to leave her physically. I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of thinking South Dakota looks like a good place to go. Looks like a sanctuary over there. Because I tell you what, if this thing splits up and Minnesota forms a union with all these anti-Christian, socialist, godless states, I am getting the heck out of here, and I'm not looking back. I'm going to be like, or I'm not going to be like Lot's wife, looking back at Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm going to kick the dust off my feet and say, good riddance. I'd be sad that we lost the battle and we had to go, but I would not think twice. I would get out of here because I don't want to receive these plagues. Verse 5, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Globalism, world socialism, that's what we're talking about here. Verse 6, and the woman, now here we go, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. I believe this is someplace in the future. This could be, this might be a prophecy that should be taken from a spiritual perspective, or it may be literal. I don't know. But at this point, we kind of see that there could be a literal split. And I think we need to be prepared for it. So if God calls us to flee into the heartland, into the wilderness, away from these leftist socialist cities, then that's, I believe, what we would do. Verse 14, skipping on down to verse 14 of Revelation 12, and to the woman were given 2 wings. The woman that was fleeing, she was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time and a times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. Okay? So now check this out. Even if we did split up and flee, guess what? The serpent's not going to leave us alone and say, the leftists aren't going to say, we're so glad that we're peaceful now and you guys are over there and we're over here. They'd still try to invade us. They would still try to take us over, because Satan's not going to just sit back and let us be at peace worshiping God without a fight. Verse 17, and the dragon, now here's why. Here's the explanation of what I just said. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now check this out, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. That's what we want. We want, us conservatives, us Christian patriots, we want to be one nation under God. We want our nation to be a God-fearing nation. We want to, as in President Trump's words, in America, we worship God, not government. Okay? Well, the left, they worship government and the elite and deny God. Okay? Deny God. All right. So quickly, we had an example in prophecy of when God tells his people, come out and be separate from among Babylon. I don't want you to be in there because I don't want you to receive her punishments. Remember Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot had to get out of there, otherwise he was going to die. And his wife looked back, and what happened? She died anyways, even after getting out of there. Numbers 16 gives us, I'm not going to read this whole instance, but there was another case at the beginning, the founding of God's nation, with Moses bringing the children of Israel into the wilderness, getting ready to enter the promised land. There was a big political rebellion that took place, and Korah led it against Moses and Aaron. This is what happened here. In verse 19, it says, and Korah gathered all the congregation against them unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the congregation. Okay, so Korah was leading a rebellion against Moses and against Aaron, and grabbing all these heads of the congregation. So this was like a civil war going on right back in the beginning of Israel's history. Verse 20, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Okay? So what did God say? Make peace with them, compromise with them, compromise with Korah. No, he said, get away from them so that I can destroy them. Now, if we did that in America, we gave these liberal states, they said, fine, we're not part of the union anymore. I wouldn't want to be where Korah and his friends are, okay? In other words, if Minnesota becomes, that's where I live, if Minnesota becomes part of a godless socialist union, I want to get the heck out of there and separate myself from these people so I'm not destroyed with them. Another example in the New Testament that you're supposed to separate yourselves from the ungodly, from the unclean. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16 says, and what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Here it is right here. Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate. Be ye separate. Okay? Succeed from them. Okay? Secede from them, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. Okay? All right. So we see even in the New Testament, there are times when God says the nation has gotten so polluted, so sick, so vile. And right now it's half. It's half and half. Okay? Praise God for that it's not 90% versus the 10% of us, which it looked like that's where we were headed before the 2016 election. But praise God, we're fighting back. We're actually fighting back. So that's a good thing. We're not just bowing down under the commands of the socialist agenda. So does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to share? Yes, Jacob.
Who's Korah?
Korah, he was a man from the Old Testament during the time of Moses that led a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. God chose Moses and Aaron to lead the Israelites, but Korah thought, no, I could do a better job. We're going to do it my way. Okay. And I will add this to the study as well. There was a time in Israel's history, we all know about it, when there was a civil war, and the kingdom of Israel split into two kingdoms, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay. And one of the reasons they split was because the king of Judah said he was going to he was going to rule them as an oppressor. Basically heavy taxation. He used the comment of my father ruled you under his thumb, but I go and I start one of these things and I forget what it was exactly. But there was some saying. He basically said, my father ruled you with a little bit of oppression, but I'm going to nail it to you. And then they said, all right, Israel, to your tents. We're splitting up. We're not going to follow this king anymore. We're out of here. Okay. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now. And then Israel then had their own king. And Judah had their own king from then on out. That could be where we're headed right now. It could be where we're headed right now. We don't know. But any other questions or comments? Do we have any from our live audience at all? I know we're probably not expecting too many, being this is our first time going live, but
it seems to me though that it's been at least a year that Trump is getting dirt on all these different people, but nothing happens. Satan's pretty clever. I mean, how do these people get away with breaking the law and getting away with it? I don't understand that.
That's a great question. And I think we're going to actually touch on that in our Jeremiah 5 study. And so I'll refrain from elaborating on that because we'll talk about that. But that's a good question. It leads right into this. Yeah, why do they keep getting away with it? Why isn't anybody why isn't the Supreme Court seeking the truth? Why isn't the FBI prosecuting Joe Biden, his son, and Joe Biden himself. Why do the wicked keep getting away with all this? That's a frustration that we all have right now. And I think Jeremiah 5 is going to agree with us there.
Yeah, I've never been so frustrated. I heard that they turned that down, the Texas suit. I just couldn't believe it because, again, what's the point of having a Supreme Court? If there was ever something that should be seen by the Supreme Court, it would be the fraudulent, unlawful election we just had. I mean, I just can't even wrap my head around it, especially supposedly this conservative Supreme Court.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever been so frustrated with politics than I am with that. I don't even know what to say. It's like, where do you go now? There's no super Supreme Court to go to.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
nothing. We're stuck.
God's Supreme Court. That's about
Well,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
In
That
prayer,
is.
right? Yeah.
But-
Yeah, I hear you.
And I heard that Rush Limbaugh said that, and I mean, for someone like that to say that, he's not a big conspiracy guy or anything, and he's usually pretty accurate with, he has his thumb on the pulse,
Yeah.
and he says we're trending in that direction, and I believe it.
Well, and again, to back up what Rush Limbaugh said, Jesus says a nation divided cannot stand. So obviously, we're going to trend towards that. What else are we going to trend towards? If we don't, unless we submit and we give in, we just roll over and say, okay, we'll be socialists, we'll be communists. That's the only other option, and we're not going to do that. So
Yeah, a couple people did comment. Mary Ann said the United States isn't united anymore. I agree. Victoria, the sword of the Lord cuts both ways, left and right. And also Victoria wrote, beware of the vaccines they're pushing.
right.
It's a whole other issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, if we can't even trust our elections and we see all these wicked people get away with everything, who's going to trust a vaccine? That it's not doing something devious to us, like affecting our fertility rate and other things.
Oh, and Deanne just said, thank you for having live Sunday broadcast. So.
All right. Well, I don't think we've had any issues. I know we tried this a little while back, and we tried it when our internet wasn't that great. It was like on the borderline of, you might be able to do it, and then it was an unpleasant experience for those trying to watch. And now we finally got oh, I lost my screen there. We finally got the fast internet up here in my area. They buried all the the broadband lines here this fall, and we just got it on Monday. So, and we're already got our studio up, so we're happy about that. Any other questions and comments?
Seems like they're fearing the wrong spirit. The evil spirit versus God.
Right.
You should fear God above all other things. But they're fearing evil.
Yep.
They're afraid.
That's true.
The Supreme Court people, you mean?
Yeah. And the people,
In general, people, we better join those guys because we're afraid.
yeah.
We're going to get hurt or something.
You're right, though, the Supreme Court, too. They're fearing the evil people, what they're going to say.
Well, they probably fear if they touch this case that they're going to be under threats of assassination and
From the wicked.
yeah, and Antifa, yeah, all these demonic groups gathering against them. But at some point, you have to fulfill your oaths
They should
and do your
fear
duty.
God.
Yeah, fear God, and hey, if you get killed doing what's right, if you take the position of being a Supreme Court justice and you're not willing to put your life on the line for our constitutional republic, you have absolutely no business being on that Supreme Court.
Yep.
No business at all. Before I get too fired up about that, maybe we ought to take this be our 10-minute break. So those of you who are watching live, you're going to lose this live stream. We're going to cut it off, and we're going to start a new one, which will be our Jeremiah chapter 5 line-by-line study. So please look for that. We're going to get it up here in a couple minutes and get that rolling. Thank you. God bless you. We're good, Jacob.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible sword. His truth is marching on.